It's collaboration time! If you've ever been curious what it's like to work at a pet or fish store, keep watching to see my interview of Chris Wang, host of the YouTube channel Fish for Thought, on life as a pet store employee. Afterwards, don't forget to visit his channel where you can see my video on honey gourami care, linked in the description. Hi, this is a gamer's wife, here with practical fish care tips so busy aquarists like you can spend more time enjoying your aquariums. And I'm really excited to be interviewing Chris, a fellow fish tuber who has been cracking me up with his dry sense of humor. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet in person because he's in Canada, I'm in the United States, but hopefully you'll enjoy our discussion. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me, Chris.
Thanks for having me on your channel.
So, for people who are meeting you for the first time, Chris, tell them about your channel.
So my channel is on the fish keeping hobby, and first and foremost it's to provide beginners with a stepping stone, and secondly to entertain.
Tell us a little about your background. How did you get into fish keeping, and what made you decide to start a YouTube channel?
I've always been interested in all sorts of animals, and especially aquatic animals when I was growing up. So I started keeping fish when I was 10. After a whole year of going to my public library and doing research, my parents finally let me have my own tank. I decided to start a YouTube channel because I want to share my passion with anyone who's willing to watch.
And are you currently a student or working?
I am currently a student and I am working as well. I am studying ecological restoration, and my work is also in that same environment.
Now I heard you used to work at a pet store. How old were you and how long did you work there?
I think I was around 17 and I worked for a couple of years.
Was it like a big name box store or a smaller mom and pop store? And what did you do there?
It was a local store with a few franchises in the area, and for our store we did basically everything there is to do with pets. So I was in charge of the fish section, but that doesn't mean I was exclusive there. I did everything that had to do with dogs, cats, birds, reptiles, small mammals, amphibians, and arachnids, and other insects.
So you probably had a lot of experiences with people who are just starting to keep fish for the first time and may not have put a lot of research or thought into their new aquatic pet. What are some of the most common mistakes that you saw customers making?
Yeah, so the most frequent mistake that I saw new beginner hobbyists doing is, well, they come in and they ask, why is my new tank already cloudy and murky? I've already done a few water changes, why is it still cloudy? And I tell them, yeah, so you should just not touch the tank and should not put any fish or any food in there. Don't do any water changes. It's just a colony of bacteria that's going to die off if you don't give it any nutrients. So it will go away on its own, literally.
And what is some of the general advice you would usually give these customers to help them? I mean, they're in the store, they've got money, and they probably don't want to leave without a fish.
This is one of the most annoying things that I have to deal with at the pet store. Is my customers, they come in and they don't want to spend any money, so they have a really limited budget and they expect to leave with a full tank, and they don't really necessarily care that the fish is going to die, because I tell them if you don't get a heater or if you don't get dechlorinator, if you don't get a tank big enough, that fish will die in the next week or so, right? So my favorite thing to do is lead them towards buying a betta. It is the better decision. All right, anyway, but with a betta, that leaves with more room for error, or more within their budget, because their fish tanks are generally smaller, and they don't need as much stuff or as much to consider as if they were to go with some fish that needed a 10-gallon tank at the minimum.
For a beginner fish keeper, what are some of the best types of fish and aquarium setups that you would recommend? You know, what's really bulletproof and hard to mess up?
My favorite bulletproof tank is going to have to be Harlequin Raspora tank. Slap a few pieces of Anubias in there and you're good to go. They're really, really vibrant, really, really good looking, and they're beginner friendly because they're very hardy fish. The Anubias, they don't need too much nutrients, they don't need a nutrient rich substrate, and you just have to dose it with liquid fertilizer from time to time. The light can be low tech as well, you don't need any CO2, and you're good.
You know how everybody always tells new aquarists, do your research, do your research. Well, what are some of the top sources of information that you would recommend?
Research is very important. Do I recommend you guys go to the library and pick out books? Well, that's not a bad choice, but there's many more convenient choices, such as YouTube. YouTube is the most simple, but the most efficient and effective way to learn if a fish is right for you, or if a tank or a plant is right for you. It's got the visual appeal and someone's telling you information. But if you wanted more specific information, you wanted more opinions, feel free to scroll down to the comment section and see what people are saying. If you want even more, then just use Google. If you Google that fish or that plant or whatever you need, there's going to be a bunch of answers from a bunch of forums that you can choose from. So there's no need to limit yourself to one forum. So YouTube and Google.
So, I'm super curious, but what is the craziest or wackiest thing that happened to you as a fish store employee?
This is a very short story, but I love it. This actually happened a few times, but the first time really got me and really perplexed me. I was like, this is possible? So one of the customers came in and he was like, hey man, I got a new tank and it's been a week and everything is green and my fish are looking really sad and my plants are already dying. Why is this happening? Can you help me? Like, does this happen to your tanks? I'm like, okay, so we start going through the list. I'm like, did you do a water change or did you put some beneficial bacteria? Do you have soil in there or something like that? Maybe an algae outbreak? And it turns out this guy literally never turned off his light. He left that light on 24 hours a day for a week since the time he got that tank. I was trying very hard to hold in my laughter and hold in my just utter surprise and shock. But yeah, that was probably one of the funniest moments or craziest moments.
Final question before we leave this portion of the interview, but do you see any major differences between the way Canadians and Americans keep fish? I'm always really interested to see what other countries around the world do for fish keeping.
I think, yes, there is a difference between the Canada and the US when it comes to fish keeping, but I think that's because the Canadian market or influence in this hobby is not as saturated or not as popular as the US. If we have as much resources and as many of the awesome conventions like AE in Canada, then I think people will start doing the same kind of level of aquascaping and care they put into the fish tank hobby. Not saying that Canadians don't, I'm just saying not enough of us do.
All right, we are ready for our lightning round. Rapid fire, frequently asked fishy facts, all about you, Chris. Ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's get it.
Boom, let's go. What's your favorite fish to keep?
My favorite fish to keep has got to be the bristlenose pleco. They're very interesting to look at and they have very feisty personalities.
Fish you would never keep again.
This is pretty typical to a lot of fish keepers, but the Chinese algae eater. They make a big mess of your tank and they attack other fish. Never get the Chinese algae eater.
Favorite aquarium plant?
If you watch my stuff, then you know that I love chlorine. They are low lighting, low maintenance, very beginner friendly plant, and they add that texture to the aquarium.
What's the greatest number of aquariums you've ever kept at one time, and then how many do you currently keep?
If you include my pet shop days, then I have taken care of over 40 tanks at once, not including betta tanks, but right now at home I have 2.
What's on your fish keeping bucket list?
Oh, there's so much on my fish bucket list. I want to make a fish rack with a lot of different biotopes. I also want to start looking into making closed ecosystems, nano closed ecosystems. A lot to do.
And do you have any pets besides fish?
I've kept turtles, I've kept birds, so 2 budgies and a cockatiel, and I've kept bearded dragons. I recommend all of them. They're amazing pets to have. Right now I only have fish.
Yay! You survived the interview! Thanks so much for your time, Chris. For people who want to learn more about you, get a hold of you, where can they go?
If you want to see more content from me, head over to Fish for Thought on YouTube and also check out The Planted Lens on Instagram.
Hope you enjoyed that interview with Chris, the informative and oh so awesome YouTuber for Fish for Thought. If you can't get enough, click on the screen over here to watch more from my Confessions of an Aquarium Addict series, and then subscribe to join our community. Take time to enjoy your aquariums, and I'll see you next time.